It'd be a no-brainer. But welcome to Mastering the Art of Skill Translation, the Career Pivot. My background, I own a coaching company called Career Success Pathways, and I have helped people, make changes to their careers and find skills or find roles that they're passionate about. I'm having a hard time. We were just doing this. I'm having a hard time forwarding these slides. Oh, here we go. So I want to give you a little bit about my background and then let you know my overall approach to career coaching, just so you can have a little bit of background on me as we go into this. I have lived in Chicago. I actually started my world in Chicago, went to the University of Illinois at Chicago, and then did my master's at Booth. I was part of an EXP program, or I'm sorry, the XP program. And then I spent 7 years in Denver. So I climbed mountains and did fun things out there. And now I am literally living in the middle of nowhere in Southeast Missouri. Those are my neighbors, the cows that are down there in the bottom left-hand corner. And I have my daughter and her dog back with me. She's returning to school. So she's out here living in the middle of nowhere with me as well. And my mom and one of my sisters are pretty close too. That is my whole family. I'm one of 7 girls. And so, have a big background of family. And in my life now, I just like to stay active. I hike, I bike, I kayak. I actually have started my hand in gardening where I am now. So just little things about me. And I consider myself a lifelong learner from that. And then we're going to go ahead and get started with I'll tell you a little bit real quick before this. Just my philosophy to career coaching is, finding what people are passionate about, and knowing that people own their search. And so just guiding people to do what's best for them and getting them to, I always say, if you can find what you're good at, what you love doing, and where they're hiring, that's your sweet spot to find for a career. But let's go ahead and get started with our first poll question for today's topic. And we just wanted to gauge what people were thinking and how you sit right now. So if you had to look at, when you're looking at going into a new industry, what is your biggest concern that you have right now? And we'll give people just a few seconds to get that filled out. Looks like imposter syndrome, which is very, very high on the list of things that people feel, all over the board. Even staying in the industry, a lot of people feel the imposter syndrome. So it looks like that's winning out at almost 50%. And then networking outside of the current roles. And I did a presentation for the university in June of 2024, and I'll touch on just a couple slides from that at the end because I think networking is so important. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about networking outside of the current circles. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on today's topic. So in today's webinar, I'm hoping to hit on 4 objectives. So deconstructing industry jargon, mapping functional equivalencies, auditing for transferable skills, and optimizing the hybrid resume. I will, self-admittedly, I put a lot on my slides, but it's because I want to give them to you at the end of this. So there's a lot more than I will actually speak to on each slide, and you will get a copy of my slides when Kashima sends out the presentation and the recording. I am working at a slow pace today. Not sure to go forward. Give me 1 second to figure this out. There we go. So deconstructing industry jargon. What this really is taking your, scrubbing out the industry words, that specific terminology that you're using in your resume, and really making it more universal, solution-oriented. You really want to talk about your results, your impact, the successes you've had in an overall global way, so that somebody who's reading your resume doesn't necessarily see what you're coming from, but where you're going to. We want that to resonate with the hiring managers, and we just want those universal business outcomes. And so one way to get there is to use the what, how, why formula. And the what is really that baseline task or duty. That's what you're going to put in here. And I have an example of this in just a few minutes, but the what is that baseline task or duty? And a lot of times that is industry locked, but what we want to do is open that up to show how it can be done across different industries. The how is that methodology. This proves the capability of what you're doing. And the why is that result, the outcome, the success, the impact that you've had. And so ways to get there is, stripping away that what. And one way to do that is to ask the so what test. And so every time you look at a bullet on your resume, ask, if you take out that industry specific information, would a stranger still understand the value I create? And I have lots of examples or a few examples in here that will showcase that to you. But one here is, if you were in nursing and you said I coordinated bedside care for 10 patients, you can change that to project management to say I prioritize high stakes deliverables in a fast paced 24/7 environment. Same exact skill and function that you've done, but just opening that up to get outside of the nursing industry and into project management. And a lot of times, what's happening here is, you don't want the hiring manager and the recruiter to have to do the homework. You want to hand them the answer key. So being able to give them the information that they need to know that you can slide right into that role is what you're going for. Here's another example. So if you say you manage quarterly budgets, you manage the quarterly budget for a company. But the how is actually by automating the cross-department expense tracking using data-driven forecasting. And the why is you eliminated a 12% budget variance and reallocated $40,000 to high priority growth projects. So as you add each piece of that, the what, the how, the why, and make it less industry specific and more universally driven, you'll start to see that you have a lot of transferable skills that you can bring into pivoting your industry. And then we're ready for poll question number 2. Just on a scale of 1 to 5, how much industry speak do you have currently on your resume? And I kind of gave the midlines here. So it looks like people are coming in at that middle. It's a mix of general and specific. And a lot of times when you're looking at job descriptions, that's a great way to gauge how much you should be using more specific language. And so we look again about 50% to be at a mix of general and specific on here. With a runner-up of kind of in the middle of, it's basically an internal manual for my current company. So yeah, so pulling some of that specific industry out, and then just about 10% of people have where it's probably way too heavy on the industry side. I think I have to close out of this to be able to move forward. And so what we'll do next is go into the mapping the functional equivalencies. So this is taking those industry specific pieces or from one industry and seeing how we can roll it over into that next industry. So it's basically creating a translation map. And so you want to take that you had classroom management, for example, and showcase that you could do stakeholder facilitation and conflict resolution, which is very different, very, very similar, but different wording for, pivoting. And the goal here, like I said, is proving that you've already done the job, just in a different industry. And that here's another example. If the job description mentions cross-functional collaborations and you've run fundraising meetings, you actually have a match for that. And here are some examples in the survey that went out for everybody. You were asked to give us some questions that you wanted or some examples that you wanted. And so these came in from examples from people of industries that they wanted to pivot from and to. So I did use that survey to build out this deck a little bit. So if you're one of the people on the call that put that together, you'll get the information that you were looking for specifically, but this should cover a lot of different industries. We won't go through all of those today, but like I said, you'll get these slides. The previous experience that you're going from to the new sector on this side, I'll just highlight the top two here. So going from research, where it's very data and methodologies based, and then moving into operations, where it's workflows and optimization from that perspective. And then the nonprofit would be going from where people are master relationship builders and scrappy problem solvers, right? You have to watch your budget there. Going into corporate, where it's stakeholder management and ROI. Still watching your budget, but just with probably a little bit more resources than you have from a nonprofit perspective. And then you can see the rest of the examples here, and I'll showcase. So here's a the first specific one, which is the research to operations. The bridge here is where you're very analytical. You have a very analytical methodology to where you want to have process execution. Very similar again, but the way you can word it to move from one industry to the other is what we're going for here. So on each one of these slides, I just gave 3 examples. So we'll take the middle one here. So on the research side, you're looking at grant writing and protocol design. So you would write strict laboratory protocols and move that into operations, where you would develop standard operating procedures and scale those to ensure cross-functional compliance and quality control. So just different ways to take one skill set in one industry to move it over to the operations side from the research side. And then again, we'll look at the nonprofit to corporate, where the bridge would be resource constraints to bottom line efficiency. And not that one precludes the other. Of course, nonprofit wants bottom line efficiency. It's just how are people really looking at the wording from that. And then again, we can do the middle one here, volunteer coordination. You recruited and managed 100 unpaid volunteers for an event, over to cross-functional project management, where you led cross-functional matrix teams under tight deadlines without direct reporting authority. So again, same thing that you did, just moving it over into the industry that you're looking for. And I challenge people, you have a lot more transferable skills than you ever realize. I worked with one woman, and she was doing, she was an actuary in the insurance world and wanted to move into healthcare, completely different industry. And when we worked together, she had that imposter syndrome, right? So not feeling like she would be able to move over into the healthcare world because she didn't know a lot about it. And I cautioned her, I said, be careful, because actuary is actuary in any world, right? So, so just going in, all you have to do is, you have all the skills, you just need to learn the industry. And she didn't feel confident. So she ended up getting the job in the healthcare world, but they put her 2 levels down from where she was. She called me 4 months into that role, and she said, I'm already doing the job above me. And she said, and they'll have me back to my parallel move, where I would have parallel moved within the year. She goes, Sue, the problem is they only promote 1 level at a time, 1 level per year. So it was going to take her 2 years to get back to her current pay, what she left her pay and her level from what she was doing. And she quite honestly could have gone in at that level had she pushed a little harder, or she could have gone in 1 level below and been there a lot faster. So just be very thoughtful when you are looking at these transferable skills that you have a lot more transferable skills than most people realize. And then I'm just going to kind of flip through quickly on these other ones. So this corporate law to higher education is another example I gave. Consulting to industry. This is a big one. People get burnt out in consulting and want to move industry in-house. So if that's something you're doing, this is definitely, something that's viable and doable. And then corporate tech to nonprofit and foundation, public sector to private sector, and vice versa. You can always read these the opposite way as well. Hospitality to tech, customer success, and academia to corporate. So those are the examples I specifically gave in here, and, willing to provide more if people wanted to reach out if you needed help on that. But I do also give a quick example of how to find these. And so let's go ahead and move on to mastering the art, the third agenda item, the audit for transferable skills. And now this is, how do you find these skills that are transferable that you want to move? So there's 4 pillars that you could push these into. And these pillars are going to be leadership, technical logic, project management, and communication. So here's a little bit of an example for each of these. And these are the skills you would be able to perform in any company. Just because you pick one doesn't mean it precludes you from having the others. It's just, where is your real strength? So let's go ahead and take a look at these 4 portable pillars from some functional skill standpoints. So leadership would include mentoring, conflict resolution, influence, even if you don't have the title for influence. Technical logic is being able to learn new systems, troubleshoot. Project management is workflow optimization, meeting deadlines, that resource allocation. And then communication would be public speaking, getting stakeholder buy-in, the technical or non-technical writing as well. So what I'd like to do is just give you a little matrix now of showcasing the industry language is what you did in your old world and why your old boss would care. But the portable translation is what can you do anywhere and why it matters to your new boss. A couple different examples of these would be from education to corporate training and learning and development. And for this one, sorry, I thought I had a poll in here. I apologize. I don't know what happened to it. From industry jargon, let's go ahead and do that third poll. I know we'll just skip through it if I get to it on the slide. I thought it was in here. So the next poll is which one of these pillars does would you say is your strength? And like I said, just because you pick one, it doesn't preclude you from having the others. It's just, where do you think your strength lies right now? We have a good mix. Yeah, with project management in the lead and communication a pretty close second. So we have a nice mix of that poll. And so again, coming back to this this example, so the education, moving from education to corporate training and L&D, very similar, right? If you do get into corporate training, it's a lot like educating, just outside of the classroom. So developed IEPs and differentiated instruction for a 5th grade classroom of 30 seconds. And then the translation would be you design and implemented individualized development plans and tailored training modules for diverse groups, improving engagement performance metrics by 20%. The why is really important. People really, people's eyes are drawn to numbers. And while the first one does include numbers, the other one that showcases the improving engagement performance metric is really important as well. And many educators feel like they only really know how to teach kids, but they're actually masters of curriculum development. And being able to manage stakeholders as well. So that's always, being able to take that classroom education and bringing it into corporate is a lot easier, and it's a lot easier transition than people give themselves credit for. But the pillars here would be communication and leadership. And then we can go on to the next one. I figured out what it is. When we put up a poll, I have to click back into my slides. Otherwise they don't forward. So from a military standpoint, operations and project management. So here, what we're looking at is, service members will usually struggle to explain their responsibilities, and they're big responsibilities. You're responsible for people and lots of, very expensive equipment. But it's hard to explain that without sounding like a tactical manual. So how do we take the industry jargon of the military and turn it into operations and program management or project management? And so here, served as the NCOIC, which is technically a project manager of a motor pool. We directed cross-functional operations for a high-value fleet, managed resource allocation, preventative maintenance schedules, and quality assurance to ensure 100% operational readiness. So you're hitting the pillars of project management and technical logic. And if you can hit all 4 of those pillars on your resume, you easily can withstand, like you have a great foundation. You look at that as the to hold that roof of your career. And then another example is retail and hospitality to customer service, or sorry, customer success and service and SaaS. And then here again, people feel like they're crisis managers, but you don't have to use that language, or they don't use that language. So, you can be able to translate the retail and hospitality piece of handling difficult customers to manage high-stake conflict resolution and retention strategies during peak demand periods. And once again, pillars are communication and technical logic. And one last example here is the healthcare to health tech or admin. So monitored patient vitals and administered medications according to physician orders in the ICU. Very, very technical jargon there. The translation, analyze real-time critical data sets to make high-pressure decision and ensure 100% regulatory compliance in a high-risk environment. Technical logic and leadership, taking charge. So there you can easily take the information from nursing and move it into healthcare, health tech. One question I get a lot is, how do I move from after taking a sabbatical? So a lot of people will take time off to take care of an elderly parent. They may take a maternity or paternity break. They may take time to go to school, right? But how do you return from that? And so here are some examples of functional skills that you've used during this time frame that you've been off, that you can work into your resume or your CV and use these as a way to showcase that you've been maintaining these skills during this time frame. And of course, the way that you showcase these would vary based upon your background. I have one example at the end that I'll share on one way to showcase these top line skills and get them front and center. And then here's a little exercise we can do. So we'll just take a couple minutes here and let's write 3 wins from your career and categorize them into the 4 pillars. And if you want to just do 2, that's okay as well. And if anybody wants to share what they're thinking in the chat, I would love to see what people have available. If anybody's willing to share one. And Lee just shared that, using the terminology and keywords in the job descriptions, absolutely. And I'll give you an example of that at the end. Anybody have an example they're willing to share to listen to one of the 4 pillars? And those, just as a reminder, are leadership. Catherine, you have wins. Leadership, technical logic, project management, communication. And we can move forward. And if somebody thinks of a win that they have that they'd like to share with us, I'd love to see it. Does a turnaround investment fund? KT said turnaround investment fund. Alan Isaac said open a new project office in a new country. That's awesome. Communication across countries. These are great. Thanks for sharing. And let's stop here for a quick second before we head into our 4th objective for today and see if there's any questions or comments or feedback or concerns. Shima, do you see anything come in?
Yeah, just a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A box.
And I love that the winds are still coming in. We have KV, technical leadership, led a team to create a career acceleration project and take it to market, seeing positive traction with two big universities. And John says, consistently presented bi-weekly performance reporting for advertising campaigns. These are great.
So we do have a question from Alan.
Okay.
He asks, how do you get the metrics added? Sometimes it is hard to quantify.
Yeah, sometimes it is hard to quantify, especially if you're looking at potential, uh, if potentially, you have a company that does not allow you to disclose any of their numbers. There's privacy issues, things like that. So a lot of times what you can look at is turning things into percentages, or trending, if you can show trends. There's different ways to quantify it. I'd have to really look at the specifics of things, but usually percentages is a great way to do that, or to showcase trends. If you were able to move something from, a process that took months to weeks or days, that's another thing that you can do as well to quantify.
Thank you, Sue. I hope that was helpful, Alan. We do have another question from another alum. If you have been volunteering on nonprofit boards for many years, would you add those experiences to your resume and or LinkedIn?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That showcases well-roundedness, that showcase community involvement. There are lots of things that you can do from a nonprofit board perspective. Usually somebody on nonprofit boards, I'm going to tell you right now from experience, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. So if you're one of those 20% of people that's doing a lot of the work, you definitely are getting a lot done and hopefully having impact with that. If you're helping fundraise, if you're doing events, if you're making, if you're holding up one of the leadership positions, usually either a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, one of those roles within the board, you can showcase that. And it showcases if you do have a little bit of a gap on your resume, it would fill that gap for you as well. You can either include it, usually I like to include it in, a section called leadership, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name that I use in that section, but under a leadership section that is, versus up in your experience section. And then on LinkedIn, they actually have an area where you can put that you're part of organizations or sit on boards, and you can add it there. But I highly advocate adding it. Did a third
Sue, do
question
you
come
have?
in?
Yes. So this person asks, I see how translation works for resumes, but for an interview, I often need authentic stories to give as examples. It is hard to translate experience when it is industry specific.
I can see that. But I think going through this process of moving your information from industry to from old industry to new industry will help you start to create those stories that will help you change it over. Because you'll start to think of it in just a little bit of a shift way. And if you do have to refer back from what your actual experience is, of course, you're going to tell the experience based upon what you've done. I often say your resume is your marketing material. So that's what you're using to get yourself in the door. It's showcasing, and in a lot of cases, it showcases what you can do, right? Not exact. You don't want to lie on it and fabricate anything, but it's not exactly right. Your header will usually be what you're striving to be. And then the basis of the rest of it will be what you've done, but in ways that spin it to what you want to be doing, right? You want to align to what you're seeking and not what you already have done. And so from that perspective, you could definitely start to share those stories in ways that will bring a little bit of that combination of you'll have to go back and tell the details if asked for those details, but you'll spin it in a way that translates into the new industry and sector. Hopefully that made sense.
That's all the questions for now.
That was all the questions. Perfect. Perfect. We'll go ahead and move forward here. So the last agenda item is optimizing the hybrid resume. So this is a piece of it that that it kind of pulls everything together and actually gets it on that document for you. One of the big things is that you do want to apply the specific formatting techniques to highlight your achievements. And this will ensure clear value proposition within the first few seconds of a review. Because quite honestly, people say that you get 6 seconds to have your resume looked at. They say it's under 30 seconds. Statistics show, that they in statistics say that you get under 30 seconds to have your resume reviewed, and most people will say they'll scan it for 6. So we say, put your most relevant information, what they call above the fold. So that's the top section of your resume. And really, quite honestly, the strategy is going to be that executive summary. So use words that, instead of 10 years in retail, 10 years of high volume operations and team leadership. So your executive summary is going to make a difference at the top. And then you'll put in core skills. And this is where you would use your portable pillar words. So those words that are coming up under leadership, under management, project management, under communication, under technical logic. And then you go into your professional experience. And these you'll do by skill rather than just task, right? And this adds to that point that was just asked about, how do you do it on the resume and get information on there. But then, so here's a couple examples of this as well. So this person was a former technology leader and wanted to move into industry for coaching. So lots and lots of technical skills here, lots of technical words. And here's a new write-up showcasing coaching, taking their background. And what I did was I highlighted the words that are duplicative in both paragraphs. Each of these paragraphs in the bottom new industry is between 50 and 75 words. So you're not blowing it out of the water with what you're looking for to put on your executive summary. But we're getting rid of all that industry specific jargon and really opening up to showcase what the person can do from a broader perspective. And there's a couple more. I gave, I think, 3 examples here. So from a corporate finance leader, this person wanted to move and to become a nonprofit executive. So from the corporate world to the nonprofit world. Again, very industry specific, a lot of words about finance, a lot of words about, things like that. And then in the new one, the nonprofit, we worked more towards advocacy, governance, things like that, community advocacy, which are different words, but gives that background to what they've done in the past and how it can be translated. And then here's one more example. The former role was a nonprofit leader, and we used a list of criteria here and functional skills. And then they wanted to be a corporate leader. So going from the nonprofit the opposite way to for-profit. And so again, just some of the words that are duplicative and how it translates from one skill set to the next, or not from one skill set, from one industry to the next, because very similar skills. And then the next section after the executive summary is the core skills section. Alternatively, you can title this core competencies, proficiencies, proven skills, expertise, areas of expertise. There's lots of ways that you can put these words on your resume. And then I like this formatting. I gave you a lot of examples here. I would probably do about 3 rows on your resume. So from that perspective, I like the pipe in between them when you're having your resume scanned. It gives the person scanning it a very clear, definitive between words. And so it's a little bit easier to scan than it is with just commas between your words. And then the last, or this piece on here, I just gave an example of what your resume could look like. So this is what I would call above the fold. It's got your name, your contact information, the headline that you want to have along with your executive summary. And then again, that core competencies, it could be called a whole bunch of different things, and then listing those with those pipes between them. And then going into your career accomplishments. a lot of times what I like to do with clients is work less from a chronological resume and more with a skills-based resume, especially if you want to pivot careers, because then you're not tying your skill set to your jobs and when you did them chronologically, but you're actually tying your skill sets to the functional skill, your results to the functional skills that you're capable of doing. And again, we would pull those from job descriptions and make sure that they align to what you wanted to be doing. And then, like I promised at the beginning, we were going to just touch base on networking. I did do a presentation for the university in June of 2024 if you want the full slides, but I just wanted to give you, networking is relationship building. It is a huge piece of job search, especially if you do want to pivot. Let somebody tell the place that you want to go to. Get an advocate there. Get somebody who gives you that referral. And let them build up your background for people. You should be doing this throughout your career, even when you do land that next job. And I define networking, I think a lot of people define it as, oh my gosh, I have to go beg somebody for something, or I have to call in a favor, or I'm going to owe a favor to somebody. I define networking as getting people to know, like, and trust you so they want to refer or recruit you. And quite honestly, you're doing it all day, every day, your relationship building. And then here's I'll leave this in the slides for you, just different strategies on thinking about networking in the digital world today. And then one last section I wanted to go over is just a couple of prompts that I made for people. Somebody told me not too long ago, when it comes to question and answer sections, the sessions within these presentations, they said, AI is always the answer. What's the question? So there's always, I have some prompts. I think this one's a good one when you're looking for what industries do you want to go into that you're not even sure. You don't even know what exists in that industry, what types of titles are out there. So this one I like because it says, I always like to start off with, whatever platform you're using for AI, go ahead and ask it that this is important. So you don't want it to hallucinate on you. You don't want it to give you, not really relevant information. So let them know it's important. You'd like for them to play the role of career coach. You're going to supply your resume and some more information. So the resume in the note down here, try to pull out your PII, your personally identifiable information, unless you've really locked down your security on your unless you've really locked down the security on the platform that you're using. And then more information would include your passions, desires, transferable skills that you don't quite list on your resume yet. And then what you want that AI system to do is analyze the information and provide you with a table of job titles, estimated salaries, current qualification levels, and what work would you need to do to be qualified. And I find this gives you a really nice table that will let you see exactly what jobs are available, what you might be able to get for salary, because that's so important to people. Yes, it's great to have a great job, but it's also great to be paid for the work you're doing. And then the qualification level you're currently at with what you need to get qualified for. And then this could be a secondary prompt to that. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually the prompt for when you're looking for, so that's a standalone prompt. This is the prompt for when you're looking to have your resume, now once you've done it, aligned to the job description that you're looking for. So what you would do here, again, help me with something important. I'm seeking your assistant. Please act as a hiring manager or talent acquisition professional. You'll provide the resume and the job description. And here you're going to ask AI to analyze the documents and show you where you're strongly aligned, moderately aligned, poorly aligned, and where there's gaps. Again, pull in your resume information without your PII, and then drop in the job description. What it's going to do here is where you're strongly aligned, you don't need to do much on that, right? You're already strongly aligned. There's nothing you need to really do. Where you're moderately aligned, if you can add in a phrase, a qualifier, a quantifier, something that'll get you strongly aligned, that's where you're going to spend some time. And then where there's gaps or where you're poorly aligned, again, you're not going to spend a lot of time here unless you miss something. You don't want to fabricate. So if you did miss something, go ahead and get that in so that you can be strongly aligned. But here, it allows you to see where you don't really meet the bill on that. And then this next prompt is the bridge to that. Or the secondary prompt to that. So on the things where you weren't strongly aligned and where there's gaps, ask AI to help you build some talking points to bridge those gaps. And that will allow you to start to come in with those pieces of information that you can now speak through at an interview. And then one last prompt I provided was just suggest ways to strengthen and align your resume to the job description without changing the meaning of the resume. And so this one, especially in Career Pivot, is very helpful because it keeps your intention of your resume, but it also helps AI allow for AI to help you create those transferable skills and those pivots for you as well. Absolutely. There's lots of great things about AI. There's lots of bad things about AI, but use it where you can. It definitely is very helpful if you're using it in the right ways. So let's go ahead and do the last poll question. And this just is going to gauge kind of where we stand with this and what you feel like you're empowered to do after today's session. And so rewriting my professional summary and bio, that's an executive summary. Researching the keywords for the target industry, that would be the 4 pillars and what words you need to get into there. Reaching out to contact different field for translation chat, that's at networking, so important. And then auditing the bullets for universal outcomes. And it looks like that professional summary and bio, and then the bullets are 2 things that people feel that they have enough information or feel empowered to do. That's fantastic. All right, awesome. And we'll go back to any questions or comments, feedback.
Thank you, Sue. So as a reminder, if you all could submit any questions in the Q&A box, we'll be sure to address them. So we have a question here from Maggie. Is there a way to better differentiate oneself while still using more universal terminology to bypass AI review for a human to actually want to read a resume?
So using as many keywords from the job description is definitely going to give you a leg up on the AI process and the whole applicant tracking system matching. So making sure that you do tailor your resume to every job that you're applying for is great. But really where we're finding bang for the buck right now out in people like looking for jobs is networking. And networking isn't as easy as it used to be. I'm going to let you know that right now. There's companies where you used to be able to at least get an interview if you were referred. There's so many referrals now that you're not always guaranteed even that initial interview. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go and network. Really try and get some sort of a leg up into the company through a referral or through networking is really where I guide people the most.
Thank you. Robin asked, regarding the bullets, when including outcomes and metrics, they can get wordy. How do you square including all that good info with keeping the resume readable?
Yes, they can get wordy. So you want to do and there's a couple different frameworks for your bullets, but really what you want to do is you want to start with that strong action word, give a little bit of context, right? So you want to show scope at some level and then give your impact statement. So if you can keep it to that. So for example, it was, I think back on the one slide where it's, I'm not even going to go back to that slide, but you could say communicated quarterly results to the CEO and executive team. So that's your action word and your scope of what you're doing in that presentation, or you could say presented versus communicated. And then your impact statement would be resulting in generating, creating and then whatever it created, the impact or result or success that you had by doing that action. And that's, if you follow that as a framework, I find you can keep your bullet points usually within 2 lines. Usually if they get to 3 or 4 lines, you can probably break them out anyway. So you can make 2 bullets out of the one is what I find happens when you get a little bit too wordy.
Thank you. Anne asked about whether or not we could send the slides to the networking presentation that you did a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. I know we
Yeah,
have the
I'm sure you have
recording.
them. Yeah, We have, you have the recording. I definitely have the slides for it too. I can send those to you as well.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the group? If so, please submit them through the Q&A box.
And I will tell you what we're seeing, just to give you kind of an idea. It's been about 18 to 24 months since we've seen multiple offers to people. We are seeing those again in the market. So, as much as people think the job market is dire out there, it is back to, and I'm not going to say it's back strong as it was 3 years ago or, sooner than that. We are definitely seeing multiple offers to people, and that's across the board. It's not just in one industry. So I also remind people your algorithm will send you what you are seeking. So if you're reading about how bad the job market looks and how horrible it is to go out and interview and there's nothing out there, it doesn't care what you're reading. It just sees the content and sends you more of it. So stop reading those articles because it's not like that out there, at least from what I can see with my clients that I work with. And start to really read the information about, interviewing better and, how in one thing that gets you better algorithm flow on your feed in LinkedIn, forward every job that comes across your feed to people. That'll keep you active in LinkedIn. It'll let you see what jobs are being posted out there, and it keeps you connected to people that are also looking for jobs. If your connections see that you have a job that you've posted, if you're able to create that connection with people, create that connection for them. That'll help you pay it forward as well, and keep you busy doing that. If you would like to, please link in with me. I am happy to create any connections I can if I'm connected to the job poster. You would just have to reach out to me and let me know. Any other questions? I'll just forward up to because here's my contact information. Like I said, if people wanted to link in with me, I'm more than happy to create those connections or, do what I can for people.
And I saw that Alan shared their LinkedIn. If anyone else would like to share their LinkedIn in the chat, definitely feel free to do so as well. Definitely
And
want
thank you to everybody
everyone
for
to stay
participating.
connected.
This was great. Just even the number of people that responded to the polls was fantastic. So that's great. Thank you. And if you link in with me, if you could just note that we met through this session, I'd appreciate it.
So there seems to not be any more questions, and I see people sharing their thanks to you, Sue. So
Right.
let's go ahead
Awesome.
and end today. So a huge thank you again to Sue for your very insightful discussion. I hope this was very helpful for you all as you pivot career industries. As a reminder, a short survey will appear. I would love to get your feedback, so please complete that survey. And again, it will only take a few minutes. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us, and we hope to see you at the next Smart Your Career webinar. Thank you again, Sue, and I hope you all have a great afternoon.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone.